In the spring of 2012, 34-year-old Eric Somuah was living his best life in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. He had built a successful career, maintained an active social life, and held big dreams for his future. Everything changed when this beloved man was found murdered inside his upscale apartment. The motive seemed mysterious, and evidence was scarce. Investigators faced the challenge of interviewing numerous people, including Eric's many neighbors, his close-knit family, his many friends, and notably, his many girlfriends. Eventually, one neighbor came forward with information that would crack the case wide open. Silver Spring in Montgomery County, Maryland sits close to Washington, D.C., and serves as the cultural and arts center of the state. The area is mostly white-collar, featuring beautiful parks, expensive homes, and a lively nightlife scene. This environment suited Eric Somuah perfectly. Eric lived alone at the Viridian Apartments, a luxury apartment complex. He worked as the top salesman at a Jaguar and Land Rover dealership in nearby Bethesda. He was also working to establish his own private at-home healthcare service business. Family and friends described Eric as charming, ambitious, hardworking, smart, and exceptionally friendly. Everyone who knew Eric truly loved him. On Tuesday, June 5, 2012, Eric's supervisor at the Jaguar dealership noticed something concerning. Eric had not shown up for work for the second day in a row. While his Monday absence might have been an unscheduled day off, his continued absence on Tuesday raised alarm bells. Eric had not returned any calls or messages, which was extremely unusual. The dealership contacted his brother Michael, who also tried to reach Eric without success. Eric was known for being attached to his cell phone. He kept it with him constantly, checked it regularly, and liked to stay in contact with people. Knowing something was wrong, Eric's two older sisters, Susie and Cynthia, drove to the Viridian Apartments that Tuesday morning to check on their brother. When they entered his apartment, Susie and Cynthia found Eric tucked away in his bed with a sheet pulled over his entire body, nearly up to his forehead. At first glance, it appeared Eric was simply sleeping peacefully. Tragically, this was not the case. Eric had died from a single gunshot wound to the top of his head. His position in the bed initially suggested to law enforcement that he might have died by suicide. However, several factors made suicide unlikely. Most obviously, there was no gun found on or near the bed, or anywhere else in the apartment. The placement of the gunshot wound also made suicide extremely improbable. This was clearly a murder. Eric, who used his cell phone frequently, had made his last recorded call at 1:38 a.m. that night. He had been alive until that late hour. When police thoroughly searched the apartment, they could not find his cell phone anywhere. A shell casing lay visible on the bed, indicating Eric had been shot with a .380 handgun. Like his cell phone, the gun had been taken from the apartment. The condition of the apartment eliminated the possibility of a burglary. There were no signs of any struggle. When police responded to the scene, everything was secure. The apartment door showed no signs of being kicked in or damaged. There was no indication of violence anywhere except in the bedroom. Valuables sat out in the open, including cash, credit cards, and a laptop. More credit cards and jeans remained in the closet. All evidence pointed to the murderer being someone with access to the apartment rather than an intruder. The motive appeared to be something other than theft, but what could it possibly be? It seemed impossible to Eric's siblings that anyone would want to harm their 34-year-old baby brother. Eric was the son of immigrants from Ghana who had set his sights on achieving the American dream through career success. A nice home, great friendships, and a bright future. By many accounts, he was living that dream. Eric also maintained an active social life. His sisters may not have known all the details, but Michael did. Michael was not just Eric's older brother, but also his best friend. Michael knew that Eric was a ladies' man who regularly visited a local bar. Bar employees reported that Eric was known to leave with a different woman most nights. Lead detective Dimitri Rubin initially suspected that Eric's romantic relationships would lead him to the killer. The crime scene suggested the murder was committed by someone who knew Eric well. It appeared calculated and personal. The Somuah family directed Detective Rubin to a woman who had been romantically involved with Eric for some time. Her name was Denise Harrington, and she was about 20 years older than Eric. Denise was independent and successful. The two had reportedly met when she visited the Jaguar dealership looking for a new car. They hit it off immediately. However, Denise was not well liked by Eric's family, perhaps due to her age and her lack of interest in building a family of her own. Still, she represented the most consistent and committed romantic relationship that the family knew about in Eric's life. After more than a year together, their relationship was struggling. Denise told police they were heading toward a breakup and that she had already told Eric this was what she wanted. She had seen at least one text message between her boyfriend and a woman named Ashley, which had prompted a fight and her decision to split. But she knew Ashley was only one of many other women Eric had been spending time with. There was someone named Tiffany as well, plus the women he met at the bar. Eric's active dating life meant there was a long list of witnesses and potential suspects to investigate. The working theory suggested the murder was motivated by jealousy and committed by someone close to Eric. Investigators naturally first looked at Denise, the deceived older girlfriend. She had a key to Eric's apartment, and the two were in the middle of a breakup. However, what seemed like a promising lead dissolved when her alibi checked out. Detective Rubin interviewed Denise 3 times, and each time she cooperated fully. She also offered complete access to her cell phone. These records placed Denise at home at the time of the murder. Nothing linked her to the crime. If not the obvious suspect, the scorned lover, then who in Eric's life could have been motivated to kill him? A potential breakthrough came from another neighbor at the Viridian complex. Katrina Ben had moved into the building only a few months earlier. She was a traveling nurse originally from Mississippi who relocated frequently for work. She was exactly the type of professional who might benefit from Eric's concept for his private healthcare business. As detectives canvassed the building, they learned that Katrina and Eric had bonded over more than just business. The two had become romantically involved over the preceding few weeks, spending more and more time together. Investigators had the unfortunate task of breaking the news to Katrina that Eric had been murdered. She expressed shock and grief. She explained that she had met Eric outside about 2 weeks after moving in. He had asked if she was a nurse because he was starting a nursing agency similar to the one she worked for. The two had connected through a love of basketball. They had been getting together to watch games every Monday night. As the weeks went by, the nights they spent together increased. In the days leading up to Eric's death, they had spent significant time together on Thursday night, then again on Sunday and again on Monday, though notably not on either Friday or Saturday. Katrina said she was confused by Eric's lack of communication after she left his apartment in the early morning hours on Tuesday, the day he died. She wondered if she was the last person to see him alive. She questioned whether he had stopped calling her or whether he had not been answering because he was already dead. She expressed that she had been depressed, suffering, angry, and crying because she thought he was ignoring her. It was possible that Katrina was indeed the last person to see Eric alive, but questions surrounded who else may have been present that night and what exactly had happened. Katrina explained that Eric had suggested they take a drive to meet with a man he knew, supposedly a drug dealer named William Woodfork. She said they drove out to meet this man, who then quickly jumped into the back of Eric's car with them. The exchange made her very uncomfortable. The man got out so fast that the car's interior light had not even gone out yet. She was worried about being identified in something like this because she worked at the National Institutes of Health. She described the man as bald, about her color, skinny, with a scruffy beard. She said she did not see his face straight on because she was not trying to look at him directly. She did not want to appear as if she wanted to know who he was. The encounter with William Woodfork in the car was not the last time Katrina saw the man that night. She woke up at about 5 a.m., a bit earlier than usual because she needed to get gas on her way to work. When she left Eric's apartment, William was sitting on the couch in the living room while Eric remained fast asleep in the bedroom. She offered no explanation for why William had turned up at Eric's home in the middle of the night, though she stated that she had woken up at one point to see them through the slightly open door, speaking in muffled tones in the living room. It did not make sense to her. She wondered why he was there. It was uncomfortable and he seemed a little weird. William Woodfork denied to investigators that he knew a man named Eric Somuah. He also insisted that even if he did business with Eric, there was no way he would know his home address. However, call logs from Eric's cell phone provider confirmed that he knew William. Eric had in fact called him on the night of his death, just as Katrina had reported. William was clearly lying to police. When a search warrant was obtained for his residence, detectives discovered a small safe inside containing a handgun, a .380, the same type used to kill Eric. William's .380 was promptly tested. Despite what looked like a mounting case against the strange man, the results came back negative. It was not the gun used in the murder. Moreover, his alibi was solid. Detectives confirmed he was far away from the Viridian apartment complex in Silver Spring that night. There also appeared to be no clear motive. Katrina Ben, it seemed, was the one who was lying and purposefully misleading the investigation. Detectives pulled the surveillance footage from the Viridian lobby and other entrances and exits. They found her timeline did not exactly line up. Katrina was captured leaving the garage at approximately 6:34 a.m. Tuesday morning. She was then shown returning at 7:05 a.m. When she returned, she parked in front of the building, got out, and walked through the lobby. She then returned to her car 5 minutes later. She explained that she had forgotten her cell phone in Eric's apartment. This meant she was at the scene of the murder close to 2 hours after she claimed she had woken up and left. If she was not the killer, she must have encountered the murderer within moments of being inside the apartment.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
2 weeks after the murder, detectives had turned their attention squarely to the grieving girlfriend who had spoken glowingly about Eric when she first learned of his tragic death. But was she truly expressing shock and distress at this horrific news? Police seized her computer and tracked the usage of her Facebook account in the period after Eric's death and before speaking with police. They found that she had visited Eric's Facebook page during this time, through which she would certainly have learned that he was dead. Yet when approached by officers at her building 4 days later and asked to speak about Eric, she responded by asking which Eric they meant. Only then did she add questions about what had happened. Katrina had relocated to Baltimore. Her apartment was searched thoroughly, and no gun was found. She had never registered a handgun in her name and even denied having ever fired one. Detective Rubin was certain he had narrowed in on the likely killer, but the only evidence he had was circumstantial. They had searched her home and found no weapon or any other physical evidence linking her to the crime, like Eric's missing cell phone. The case went cold. Katrina Ben moved back to her home state of Mississippi, and the investigation stalled out for nearly a year. During this time, Detective Rubin began to systematically test every .380 handgun in the possession of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency that had been recovered in Montgomery County since the date of Eric's death. They had tested 57 different handguns by the time they reached one that had been registered to a person in a Mississippi town. The registration was within 10 miles of Katrina Ben's hometown. This one raised red flags to investigators. 2 days after the murder, this gun had been spotted by a shoemaker from Montana who was on vacation when he found himself parked in gridlock traffic on the Capitol Beltway, an interstate highway that circles Washington, D.C. The weapon was visible on the roadway. It had likely been run over at least once. The gun was broken and consisted only of its lower half. According to case documentation, the key component, the barrel, was missing. Regardless, it was fitted with the necessary replacement parts and test-fired. When it was compared with the bullet that killed Eric, this .380 could not be eliminated or excluded as the source of the bullet. The spot where the gun was found on the side of the Beltway was within 2 to 3 miles of Viridian Apartments. Detective Rubin estimated that the round-trip driving time from the apartment to the gun's location would have been 30 to 40 minutes. The surveillance tapes at the Viridian showed that Katrina had left at 6:34 a.m. and returned 31 minutes later. Through the serial number, the gun was traced through 5 previous owners in Mississippi to a pawn shop only a few miles away from Katrina's home. There, the shop had recorded a sales receipt, later turned over to the ATF, that confirmed to whom the gun had been sold. None other than Katrina Ben. When Katrina was pulled back in for questioning the second time, the tone had shifted on both sides. She now claimed that she had owned a gun and that she had never lied to investigators on this point. When asked what kind of firearm she owned, she confirmed it was a .380. She claimed the reason she had not told them last time was because they never asked. She insisted she had not killed anyone, so there was no need for her to mention having a gun. She maintained they never specifically asked if she owned a gun, only if she had ever held or fired one. However, Katrina was unaware that during the conversation in her Baltimore apartment, Detective Rubin had been secretly recording the exchange. In that recording, when asked if she owned a gun, she had clearly said no. When asked if she had ever fired a gun, she had also said no. Evidence from Katrina's own statements and text message exchanges showed that Eric's many open relationships with other women was a source of jealousy and anger for her. She admitted Eric was a great guy but said she was not even trying to be with Eric in a serious way. To be honest, when he would tell her he was in love with her, she never believed him. She acknowledged that she and Eric had talked about their future together. She also admitted that she became angry, vindictive, and possessive whenever he turned her down for a date or failed to show up after having agreed to plans. When Eric did not show up on time to watch a basketball game with her on Thursday, May 31st, 5 days before his murder, Katrina said she was furious. That night, they exchanged angry texts, although they ultimately spent the night together. On Sunday, Katrina forbade him to go to a party because she had plans for them together. On the last night of his life, Eric did not return home in time for the two of them to watch a game together as they had scheduled. When he did return, he paid little attention to her. When confronted with the evidence, Katrina protested. She questioned why her boyfriend would be murdered with her gun. She claimed it did not make sense. She accused the detectives of telling lies to different people they had questioned about her. She suggested that if someone had her gun, then it must have been stolen. When pressed about when it could have been stolen, she claimed the only person who had been in her apartment was Eric. Detectives pointed out how bad that sounded. They explained that her story was not believable. She responded that she understood, and that if she were a detective, it would look the same way to her. She insisted she had no idea what happened. She said she would rather sit there with them thinking she did it. She could not even make anything up because Eric had done nothing wrong. Eric did nothing. She could not fabricate a motive. Detectives were not convinced. Katrina was arrested and charged with murder. She entered a plea of not guilty and forced the case to trial. The evidence against her was still largely circumstantial. The match on the gun was consistent but not conclusive. Katrina's defense argued that many handguns could have been a match. Furthermore, they argued that Katrina had long since lost track of the weapon, having had no use for it. Therefore, it was entirely possible that Eric himself had retrieved it from her home at some point and kept it in his apartment. Someone else, the real murderer, then found it there and used it to kill him. Then there was the question of motive. Was it reasonable to believe that a woman whom Eric had been seeing for only a few short weeks could summon the jealousy and anger necessary to commit such a horrible crime? The prosecution said yes. They argued that Katrina, a woman who bragged to police that she had never been dumped, discovered that Eric was treating her as what they dubbed the Monday night girl. They argued that Katrina resented that Eric was out with other women on high-profile nights like Fridays and Saturdays. She felt that the relationship was more significant than the victim believed it to be, and when she found out that she was not exclusively with him, she murdered him. The prosecution claimed she thought she got away with it and believed she had gotten rid of the gun. But a good Samaritan found the gun, and through great detective work by Detective Rubin, the mystery was solved. In October 2012, Katrina Ben was convicted of first-degree murder as well as a lesser charge for the use of a firearm in the commission of a violent crime. She was sentenced to life in prison plus 20 years, ensuring that she will never be released. Montgomery County Circuit Court Judge David Boone said from the bench that the crime was so cold, so calculated, so devious from an intelligent and bright woman. He stated there was nothing the system could ever do to rehabilitate her. She was that sociopathic and detached from human life. The convicted woman then stood up and told the Somuah family that she was deeply moved by each of their impact statements and was very sorry for their loss. Eric's brother Michael responded that while nothing could bring his brother back, this would provide closure for their family, knowing she would be spending the rest of her time in prison without parole, plus another 20 years. This was the disturbing case of Eric Somuah and the investigation that brought his killer to justice. Every crime leaves a trace, and we're here to follow them. Subscribe for more real, haunting stories you won't forget.